I'm Eric Chummy, and this is Politely Pushy. Welcome to Politely Pushy. I'm your host, as always, Eric Chummy. Today, I am joined by Larry Dobrow. He's the boss, I would say, at Haymarket Media, MM+M. There's so many titles I'm trying to sort out from your LinkedIn. Can you help me walk through? Is it editor-in-chief? Is it editorial director? Is it Haymarket Media?
Well,
you
said boss, grand poobah.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
El Jefe.
right now I'm back. I think most of my Haymarket media superiors would, dispute the El Jefe title, but for the most part, I run MM+M's editorial operations. I oversee the digital, even though we have somebody who's handling our news feed on a day in, day out basis. I oversee our print operations, which are fortunately still robust, and events, sponsored content, pretty much everything that comes with being a business-to-business media brand nowadays.
What's the relationship? So Haymarket Media owns MM+M. Like, how does it work? Are there other brands in that portfolio? What's the overall look of this company?
Haymarket Media, it's based in the UK. It's been around for a while. The first of its titles that came to the United States was PR Week. I was actually on that launch team when it came over. I believe it was 1998. So under the Haymarket Business Media arm, it's PR Week, Campaign US, and MM+M. And we have McKnight's, some of our sibling titles that McKnight's Home Care in that vertical.
I noticed you're wearing the ESPN t-shirt, and I noticed you've got some sports writing in your bio, in your background. Tell me about this other dimension of your career. Before we get into the serious stuff, I'm going to get the dessert out of the way right up front.
Well, the dessert is always entertaining. My sports writing career started almost accidentally. I've always been a sportsman. Growing up in northern New Jersey, we got the Yankees, we got the Giants, Rangers, Knicks. I'm told there were some other teams around here, but I have no real interest in them. And a friend of mine was working at a title that had just come over from the UK. So he calls me up one day. It's like, hey, we need a sports component. Are you interested in writing? I was like, sure. I go, what's this title? He goes, you've never heard of it yet. It's called Maxim. So Maxim Sports was my first kind of gig. I started working for CBS Sports after that. Covered mostly baseball, but I went to the NCAA tournament a couple times, a couple of football games. It was a lot of fun. Being a sports writer nowadays, I think, is a little bit different than it was in the early time of the internet. If you want to get yelled at, you can write about sports, or you can write about politics. Marketing writing is definitely it's a much better place to make a living nowadays.
And how did you get into all of this? Because your background is law school, right? You got the Cornell degree and then Boston College JD. So how did you go from lawyer to sports writer? And then we're going to figure out, then how did you get involved in medical writing? So walk me through this.
Yeah, it doesn't really look linear on paper, but at least it made some sense at the time. No, my last year of law school, to make some money, I started bartending. And then when I realized that bartending was keeping me up extremely late and, became a little bit of it became kind of a drag. You do it for a little while, it's fun, and then you start hearing the same stuff from the same people over and over. I got a couple of freelance writing gigs, and it led to a full-time position, and here we are 20-something years later.
Oh, I see. So it was just, you were trying to make some side money as you're dealing with law school, and then it just became the full thing.
It was my side hustle that became a real hustle. I'm still licensed to practice law in New York. I would think that there are probably a couple better lawyers out there, though. I would not recommend hiring me for that.
And then how did you go from the sports work into the medical arena? Because that feels very different, and it feels like it's just a totally different set of knowledge you need to have. It's not even necessarily a writing style, but you need to know something about the medical industry, I assume, right? So how did you make that transition?
Well, a lot of doctors in the family, even though, how much can you really actually learn from that? What happened was I was a freelance writer. A friend of mine said, you've written about marketing topics before, whether it was for PR Week, whether it was for my first job, which was a trade publication called Wideband. Do you think you can do this? So I said, okay, let me look into it. And really, so much of journalism is about being curious. It's about asking questions, and it's about giving people space to respond. And, one thing led to another. And, I started working full time at MM+M about 10 years ago. and it's been a wonderful experience. Really, does it require some specific medical knowledge? Yes. Is this knowledge something that you can glean even without that background? Absolutely.
Medical marketing and media. It's not circular, but the idea that you're in the media business, but you're talking about another media business, right? The medical industry's ability to get media and to do their marketing. Do you guys learn any lessons from them of, okay, how are they using public communication to further their industry? What can we do internally to further our own brand, our own titles?
Well, I mean, certainly you can pick up, given the amount of spending that, pharma companies do on media. I mean, if you're not picking anything up, why are you even bothering to cover the space? I like to think, though, that the name of our media column is the third M. I think the media component of it was always kind of secondary to the marketing component of it, which when you think about it, it's not that surprising. The creative executions are the ones that everybody likes. Those are the ones that are celebrated at Cannes and elsewhere. But the media component of it is fascinating simply because what we have here in the United States, there are two countries, United States and New Zealand, that have DTC advertising. And it opens up a host of media strategies, tactics, approaches that really you're not seeing almost anywhere else within the healthcare realm. So, we can obviously pick some stuff up from that.
I didn't realize that. So this is unique, what we see in the United States, the direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical advertising. I assume they have this in every country.
They do not.
I'm blown away. I had no idea. I just assumed it was a normal thing. So then how do they deal with that in other countries, and how do they get the information out there then?
It's much more regulated, obviously. It's mostly distributed through physician channels. Really, you can't go directly to the consumer. You have to have some kind of a middleman. And, there is a little bit of that here in the United States as well. So much is being communicated at various points of care, at physicians' offices, at pharmacies nowadays. There are many ways the information can get out there. Is one of the systems better than another? I don't know. But certainly the U.S. has a different situation than almost everybody else.
Then talk about, now that I know this, it almost changes all the questions that I was going to ask today, because I had no idea that this was so unique to the United States. You can't look at other countries for any kind of reference model then. And it's weird that it's us in New Zealand, right? I know there's a lot of things that only the US does, but it's just an interesting thing. Okay, of all the other countries in the world, New Zealand is the other one that's allowing this. Like, what is the deal with that? Do you know? No. Okay.
I don't know. I do not know how. I do not think there are many policy similarities between the United States and New Zealand in a broader sense. So it just seems to be how it broke down.
So so you've been there for more than 10 years, right? Starting as a day one full-time employee, and now you are editor-in-chief of MM+M. What was it like working your way up the ladder, right? You go senior editor, executive editor, now editor-in-chief. What skills did you have to acquire or improve or display to your bosses in order to get that increase in responsibilities?
Well, I was a finished product from day one, let me tell you. No, that was from a finished product. A lot of it is what you referenced earlier. I did need to learn much more about the industry. I needed to learn about the various players. Medical marketing is fairly complex. Obviously you have in-house brand teams at any number of pharmaceutical and biotech companies. There are diagnostics. There are medical devices. There's the agency world component that does a lot of the work and sometimes acts as an in-between some of those clients. There's the point of care space. There are so many players. A lot of my early years at MM+M were just kind of figuring out where everybody fits on a map and adjusting our coverage to that.
Let's talk about the stories that you write, that you oversee, the ones that you approve, the ones that you kill, that you don't want to get published. What are the kinds of stories that you're looking for right now?
And again, I'm sure you've heard this anytime that you've spoken about health over the last 4.5 years, but the pandemic completely changed health media. Health media that was consumed by consumers, health media consumed by businesses, health media consumed by anyone else. I think we finally figured out that, without your health, you're really nothing. So our coverage took a little bit of a pivot then, not to overuse the cliche of a pivot, but our coverage went from, okay, health is confined to this narrow set of organizations to everyone's a health company. In my mind, Apple's a health company, Lululemon's a health company. That expansive view of health is something which I feel we need more of. We've been trying to push it out, broaden it, and there are a lot of people who are skeptical. Like, you'll call up a company and say, we're not a health company. It's like, yeah, you kind of are, almost by necessity, simply because, again, during the pandemic, we learned, without your health, we don't have too much else.
What are the stories that you feel are not getting enough coverage? Well, if you could be fully in charge, right? I know in your role, you're still not really 100% in charge because there's stakeholders left and right, and there's a limited space and people have different opinions. But if you could just, wave your magic wand and say, this is the only thing I want to see published on my site, the only stories I want to see, or we need more of X. That's what I'm trying to get at. What do you need to see more of, or you wish you could see more of, you wish you could report more on?
Well, I'm certainly not the first person who said something like this, but it would be wonderful to have more transparency within some of the pharma marketing brand teams. It's a very regulated industry. It's an industry that historically hasn't really engaged with the media. Sometimes it's about, you try to build a relationship, you try to break down walls, you do a first story on an individual or a company, and, they feel burned because it's not everything is wonderful. It's hard. Also, there's so much turnover within healthcare marketing, both on the agency side and on the brand team side, that, you get a relationship with somebody and, 2 minutes later, they're over at another company and you're starting again. So that's a little bit frustrating, but at the same time, it keeps you curious. It keeps you interested.
Is there a story you think is being talked about too much? Is there a story that you wish you would not get pitched on, you wish companies would stop talking about, you wish would just go away?
Well, I don't want any of the AI coverage to go away, because certainly AI within healthcare it's going to lead to so many good things. It's going to identify cohorts for clinical research. In so many ways, AI is going to make healthcare better. I'm a little tired of being pitched AI platforms. Everybody has, and they always call it this, a bespoke platform for AI in healthcare, whether it's for omni-channel marketing, whether it's for some other component. The one question that nobody can answer right now is like, what's different about you? It's like, well, we're doing this. It's like, that's great. 14 other people are doing the same thing. Distinguish yourself a little bit. So that's a tiny bit frustrating. But again, the all AI all the time era within, media right now, largely it's fascinating simply because it's uncharted. We don't know where any of this is going to go. There's enthusiasm, there's investment. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's kind of the perfect set of circumstances for a lot of really good reporting.
Would you ever use AI to help you guys write stories, write headlines, actually use the AI to do some of the journalistic work?
Oh, God, no. I'm sure there are ways that it can be useful. I'm a little bit older, I don't see how what we do can be entirely replaced. Can there be some efficiencies that are driven? Absolutely. But in terms of, turning it over to AI, not a great idea. About 2 years ago, for our media issue, we had AI write a story for us, and then we had it annotated by about 5 or 6 different organizations to say, all right, this is good, this is bad. It was a story about AI and health marketing, and it was comical. I mean, some of the stuff that was trawled from the internet and used in the story. I'm sure that if you ask me this question again in, 6 months, 9 months, however it is, I'll have a different response. But in a broader sense, no, I don't really see how it replaces anyone. I think it'll help us do our jobs better. But in terms of, the journalist apocalypse, that's not going to happen, I don't think.
The journalist apocalypse. How has the company, your actual company, your brand, changed the way it's been making money over the decade that you've been there? Because we've seen so much impact of now AI, let's say, generating content, what search engines have done, SEO, social media, advertising. You mentioned events, you mentioned some of these other things. All media brands are dealing with making money in a different way. How have you guys adjusted that?
We obviously have the edit commercial law, but let's be perfectly frank. I don't think there's a way that you can be in journalism right now without considering the financial strains that the business is under. We do plenty of events. We do more sponsored content than we did before. The challenge becomes doing those well. A lot of people do want to be in front of our audiences. Sometimes they don't like to be told that, hey, if you allow us to inject some journalistic rigor into what you're proposing, this can be a lot better. So that combination, I think, has been very fruitful for Haymarket Media. I don't want to speak to any of the specific commercial things simply because I don't know them. But for the most part, combining, what we have, and experience in our medical side, experience in our media and marketing side, and, working together with organizations to put content together that, yes, it's sponsored, but it's not garbage. So that would be one thing.
What are you scared of? What keeps you up at night right now?
Let's see. One of my kids broke his foot. I really want him ready for soccer season. I'm pretty good at turning off the job when I'm not, actively engaged in it. What keeps me up at night really is the fact that what you don't know can't be anticipated. It's kind of a stupid way to put it, but let me expound on that a little bit. Before the pandemic, we were going in a certain direction. This happens and it changes everything. There are so many external events, whether it's politically related, whether it's related to new developments in healthcare, that can change how we approach a given subject. It can turn around overnight. Some of what we discussed before about AI, that could turn around overnight. Any of these things can really be, I don't want to say existential change to us, but it can, make us kind of have to stop and turn around and rethink things. That worries me. The unknown is not exactly an uncommon fear, but that's pretty much where it comes down to.
And then how do you want to interact with companies, right? When a lot of companies that want to get featured, they want to get stories with you, either through your reporters, through your editors, directly through you. What's the right winning formula for come at us this particular way? Go to this person, send us this kind of a message, call me, don't call me, hit me on LinkedIn, don't hit me on LinkedIn. What is your advice for the most success, and what can people do to get themselves completely blackballed from you permanently?
Well, the blackballed one is easy. Information that's been published elsewhere that you're representing as an exclusive. And even then, blackballed, can certainly make me doubt your, trustworthiness, but blackball, why ever close the door on something? That to me is a little bit foolish. What can help more? I know there are plenty of journalists, that are certainly higher up on the journalism food chain than I am, that get pitch upon pitch upon pitch upon pitch. To me, I would rather operate from that place of having too much information. I don't think the appeals have to be corny. I don't think they need to say, I hope you are well with 4 exclamation points at the start of it. But, the more that you can send, the better that you can help me understand a given issue, a given technology, or anything else, the better.
How much time will you spend on any particular pitch? Will you open every email? Is it subject line only and it gets deleted? Do you just read the little preview? How many seconds do they have to get your attention other than the I hope you are well with 4 exclamation points?
Man, you've talked to some cynical people before me, huh? No, I'll open anything. A good subject line is always good. A pitch that offers not just talk to this person, but offers a little context. Here's how X was used. Here's the technique that was used. Here's the approach that was used. Anything that's kind of a little bit under the hoodish. I realize that a lot of pitches are tailored for huge, broad audiences, but any way that you can customize it so that it focuses specifically on medical marketing or media, that's what's going to get our attention.
I know one of your big projects, big events is the 40 under 40. What's some of the sausage making behind there? Because I've worked with some people at other firms and their only goal was, I need to get into this particular 40 under 40, not yours, but somebody else's 40 under 40. And they had their PR teams working on it. They had all this stuff and they couldn't quite crack it because they weren't compelling enough, right? They weren't interesting enough. And then what they did wasn't interesting enough. But what is some of the behind the scenes sausage making of, hey, if you want to be in this, here's what to do, here's what not to do?
That's a good question. I can say that for my own interest, I like to see people from biotech companies, from pharma brand teams, simply because, like we were saying before, we don't have as much visibility into them. I'd rather identify a young star on a whoever, Pfizer, Merck, brand team than, an agency person who's going to be, working in the agency world for the next, 20 or so years, whether in leadership role or anything else. That's a large part of it. But ultimately, anytime that you let us see you as a person a little bit, I know that's counterintuitive in that most of these programs recognize people based on their professional achievements. But, we're all people. Somebody that has a personal story that ties into what he or she does is, to me, the best type of candidate for a program of that kind. And that holds for all of our programs. That holds for our Pinnacle Awards honorees. It holds for pretty much everything we do.
How many people are trying to get in that? Out of the 40 that make it in, is it 1,000 people trying to get in? What is the admission ratio here?
Well, it depends on the year. Certain years, when there are budgets for entries and, big marketing things that people can put behind it, we get more. But I mean, ordinarily, I think we're looking at probably about 10 entries for every one, at least 10 entries for every one that we wind up waving through.
Okay. So it is pretty difficult to get in there. Low percentages of admission.
Yeah, but I mean, isn't kind of that what everybody wants, right? Participation trophies are lovely, but I think everybody would prefer it's a meritocracy.
No. I agree. I wasn't sure if it was 1 in 5, 1 in 10, 1 in 100. I think 1 in 10 is probably a fair ratio where it's like, okay, if you're good, you have a good chance of getting it, right? Whereas 1 in 100, hey, you could be great, you're still never going to get it, right? 1 in 2, that's maybe a little too easy, right? So I think 1 in 10 is a fair number there. What is your bigger priority right now? Are you managing personalities at work, just basically being a manager in an office, or are you really getting to focus on the content, focus on the journalism? How is your day split up between management and an actual publication?
Well, we're a pretty small team. We only have on strictly the edit side 4 people that are full timers. That makes us all jacks of all trades. We all work on our events. We all work on sponsored. We all work on podcasts. We all work on our day-to-day news feed. We have plenty of contributors that we tap for freelance features. We have plenty of contributors that we tap for, say, our book of the night, which is our kind of recap of the awards, what we're giving out every October. But if I were going to give like a percentage, I mean, 70% of what I do is doing the work. I like that. I'm not sure that's common given the role, but that's pretty much how it balances out on most days.
Speaking of marketing, right? What are your thoughts on what's going on with X, the former Twitter, right? And how medical companies are using it, not using it. I just think about, because I was reading today the story in the Journal about Linda Yaccarino. Maybe he's having some friction with Elon Musk as it relates to, well, we want these advertisers, this and that. And what's your take? What are you hearing from people from these companies? Do we want to use this as a platform to get our medical messaging, our pharma, pharma, wellness, healthcare, all of that? I know I keep saying medical, but it's bigger than that. How are they using X? Do they want to lean in more? Or do they want to get out of there?
It's almost sad in a certain way. I think pharma, especially, it's always been an industry that is very happy to let another industry go first, especially within the media realm, especially anywhere where what their communications are can be even slightly misconstrued. I think prior to the Elon Musk purchase, there was finally a degree of comfort with X, in which I'm never going to remember how to call X. I'm always going to call it Twitter. I think after that, and some of the doors that were reopened, I think that changed. I think pharma right now is much happier to work with influencers, especially on TikTok and Instagram. And X has sort of become all right, well, we'll throw some stuff up there, but we're not going to spend a lot of our time or money on it.
And right now, as we're taping this right now, we're in the Olympics. what has been your perspective on how your industry that you focus on, how has the healthcare industry handled the Olympics? You like what you're seeing, you don't like what you're seeing. Obviously, there's a big relationship between sports and health in terms of moving your body. And there's a lot of health companies that want to use sports to advertise. What are your thoughts so far?
We've done a ton of coverage on this. Healthcare companies, even companies that are sort of on the periphery of healthcare, have really stepped up. They've done a lot of programs, whether it's kind of traditional sponsorships, whether it's, I'm trying to think of the name of the athlete, but he's affectionately known as Pommel Horse Guy. They talked about his eye conditions that while he was doing his event the other night. And all of a sudden it becomes a health story. There's been so much of that, and it's been done in such a clever way, and also not in really like the traditional kind of, we're going to be in your face way. It's been less cloying. It's been less obvious. I give health marketers exceedingly high marks for this. They've done a terrific job.
And then coming back to your sports background, the big NBA package, right? We're going to have NBC coming in. We're going to have all this money. They're spending billions of dollars starting not this season, but the following one. They will need to sell some ads to make up that money. Well, where do you see the healthcare industry playing a role in helping NBC and Disney and Amazon backfill the billions they're now paying the NBA?
Well, first, let me say that I really hope inside the NBA winds up living. The Knicks are finally good. We can't be without Chuck and Ernie and everybody else. We need that. In terms of the balance, health organizations have been investing very heavily in the broadcasts. I mean, certainly the national ones. I don't see that changing. You have Northwell Health locally that's done a lot of sponsoring, a lot of work with the Knicks and the Rangers and a couple other teams. That's going to continue. The prices are probably going to go up because somebody's going to want to get a little bit of a return on their investment. But for the most part, it's going to continue what's already been a pretty rich relationship.
Awesome, Larry. This is great. I appreciate the time. I know you have a lot of work to do. I didn't realize that the team was actually so lean. You guys pack a big punch for a handful of people. So I didn't realize that, because you seem a lot bigger than that, right? With everything going on. So it's impressive. And it's good for people to know, hey, it's a small team. So you don't want to spray everybody with your bad pitches. You don't want to bother people. And it's a small team. So everyone's going to find out what you're doing if you're working one reporter against another, because you see a lot of these games sometimes with companies. So it's not as gigantic of a newsroom as I think people might have assumed.
Yeah, I mean, we talk with one another. That actually has some of our, you mentioned before about being blackballed or blacklisted. One of the worst offenders in this company, I'm not going to give its name, obviously, but they do it time and time again. They pitch the exact same story to PR Week that they do to Campaign US, that they do to MM+M, and say, this will be an exclusive to you. It's like, these people are across the cubicle wall from me. we talk with each other. But yeah, you always want to punch up. You always want to punch above your weight. I think we do that. And really the industry, the communications industry and everything around it helps us do that. Without it, it would be really tough to cover everything. I mean, as it is, I feel like we only get a percentage of what we should be doing. So yeah, blanket us, don't blanket us. We want to continue on that pace.
Larry, this has been great. Thank you for the time. Keep up the good work, and I'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Eric.
Thank you to my guest, and thanks for listening. Subscribe to get the latest episodes each week, and we'll see you next time.